This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
As I've always said, the 4% rule is kind of dumb. And we're going to talk about the 40-hour work week. Enjoy. Welcome back to the Age of Jeremy. You might remember me from such podcasts as the New Wealth Transfer Podcast. This podcast, Age of Jeremy. You might also remember me from such businesses as 3T Warrior Academy, Blockheads, which created Merlin, the smartest way to track your crypto, and many, many more businesses, because I do businesses like people do something else that they collect. And this is a show all about my business adventures and side quests. So make sure that you follow me on social media at Age of Jeremy and jump into my dope insights and updates on Instagram, my broadcast channel. I have a great show for you in store today. We're going to talk about the rigidity of the 4% rule. And we're also going to talk about the 40-hour work week, because I had a fun conversation with my partner in Las Vegas. My partner's not in Las Vegas. I was in Las Vegas doing a strategy session, and my partner and I had an interesting conversation that I want to talk a little bit about, because it made me rethink work and how much we work. And I wanted to think about how much I work to make sure that I'm still doing all of the things to move our business and family forward, but not forgetting about life and love and happiness and so forth. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit as well. I also want to shout out Zoom. There's the PodTrack P2. I recorded my latest Markets Radar episode with this from the room in Vegas, and it worked really, really good. It has 2 USB mics, goes to a micro SD card. You can use the USB audio interface for PC, Mac, and mobile, or anything really. You can record remote guests from your phone or computer, because it has the ability to plug in a phone and you can call people, which I love calling people and getting them on the show. I should have called Dustin while I recorded that and yelled at him and gotten it on the show. That would have been funny. And it's got 2 headphone outputs. It's also got AI noise reduction, because AI is in freaking everything. It's got tone and compressor to shape your voice, and it worked pretty good. One of the things that I have a problem with when I hold microphones, I love holding microphones. So it's very difficult for me when I have a smaller microphone or a microphone that's really close to my face to not hold it and push it up to my face. And I kept muting it, and it was muting the microphone, not the device, but muting the microphone. The device didn't pick up the audio, but Zoom LabCorp does some of the greatest products as it relates to sound for independent content creators over any other company that's out there. Their most famous product, in my opinion, for field recording or podcast recording is the H6. If I was a journalist or a better journalist and I was going out there and getting interviews with people, I would use the H6. Hands down, their H1 is one of my favorite products as well, but this PodTrack P2 works really, really good. I also have the P4, which uses XLR cables, if I'm not mistaken. But go check that out. Now, we're not sponsored by Zoom. I would love to be sponsored by Zoom. One day I want to sell their products, and I want to be sponsored by them or be an affiliate or something. So go and check out their products if you're interested in podcasting and you want to record. I buy almost all of them as they come out, and I'm going to even be buying more of them to mess around with some field recording stuff for myself, because I want to get better. You always got to get better and work more, is what I say, unless it's past those 40 hours. Or maybe it's the 40 hours of working on the stuff that you're working on and then having the time to work on the other stuff after the 40 hours. I don't know. That's what we're going to talk about today. But first, we're going to talk about beyond the 4% rule, fixing your retirement spending. I'm going to dive into that topic that hits everyone who is transitioning from savings to spending in retirement decumulation. And here's the myth. For decades, Financial pros have worshipped the 4% rule. But today, we're going to break down why this rigid rule might be leaving you broke. I'm going to share my thoughts on it and why it is going to it makes you unnecessarily frugal, and how you can build a dynamic plan instead. So this was devised by those dickhead financial advisors, which I fucking hate. Most financial advisors are only out for their own assets under management because that's how they get paid. I feel like they don't do a fiduciary responsibility. Not all of them, right? Not every single one of them. That's just my opinion. I think a fee-based model is better and better for fiduciary responsibility. But there was a financial advisor by the name of William Bengen in 1994. The 4% rule is simple. You withdraw 4% of your portfolio in year one and then adjust that exact dollar amount for inflation every year after. The rule is inherently flawed because it assumes a standard 30-year retirement, and it talks of Jiminy Christmas. It assumes historical market conditions. I don't know why I can't say assumes. And now, in fact, Bengen himself recently noted that a safe number might actually be 4.7 today, which, in my opinion, there's another flaw in financial advisory, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But the biggest issue that it doesn't really adapt. One of the biggest issues that it doesn't adapt. The other issue is that you need to be thinking about income that's coming in, not just pulling apart a big piece of a pie and hoping that there's pie left after your estimated death. So for example, if I need to have let's say I need $1 million to retire, right? Let's say that's my number. And I have $1 million, and based off of all the financial advisory content in the world, that $1 million is going to last me till I die at the age of 84. Well, what happens by the time that I get to 75 and we've reached the singularity? Okay, and I'm going to go into a computer and I'm going to live forever. Singularity is a little bit different, but let's say something happens, medicine gets even better, and whatever the problem is, I'm able to live to 105. My entire portfolio was predicated on going to nothing by the time that I'm 84, and now I'm going to live to 105. That's 21 years that I still need income. That's the biggest flaw with the way that financial advisors create portfolios rather than focusing on income. Now, our Capital DR system solves a lot of that problem because it focuses on the cash flow income piece of it and investing that income into appreciation, okay, that you can then draw upon using exit targets, putting into an IUL that can be utilized like a retirement plan. In some instances, it's not retirement, so I don't 100% want to say that. Or you could put it in something else that's going to have a safer appreciation. Or you could take it and put it back into cash flow so it's giving you more income. The problem is the income piece of it is the biggest problem, which I'll continue to talk about. But there's also the problem that it doesn't really adapt. So if your portfolio doubles during a boom, you're stuck living on an unnecessary frugal fixed income. Worse, if the market crashes, like all the people that decided to retire in 2008, lost all their retirement, they fell behind, they had to go back to work and fucking start over again when they were supposed to living out their golden years in retirement. That's the problem. If the 4% rule is dangerously rigid, what's the first step that we should take to build a responsive spending plan? Now, one of the things that you can do to look at that is you can figure out what your actuarial approach, I guess your actuarial age is for when you're going to die, and divide that by your current portfolio balance so you can see what you have left for the rest of your life and what that life expectancy is. That's one of the ways in which you can do it. And this actuarial approach, it fixes the lifespan issue, but it introduces a new one. If the market drops 30%, your spending would drop 30%. If the market surges when you only have a 5-year life expectancy, the math would tell you to spend a massive 20% of your portfolio 1 year. Now, to fix this problem, you could use the 4% rule as your anchor, but set kind of like a band around it, like 3% on the low end and 6% on the high end. So if your life expectancy calculation tells you to withdraw 7%, you hit the guardrail and cap it at 6%. So again, like one of the things you want to think about when you're thinking about how to retire and what to retire is always about having a true conversation about your death. Okay. My grandparents turned 92 this year. They're still alive. So I'm probably going to live a lot longer than other people because it's in my genes. Conversely, I might live shorter because I have diabetes. So the likelihood of making it to 92 is unlikely. Excuse me, depending on how much I spend on, I don't know, becoming a robot or whatever, because I'm a multimillionaire now, I'm going to be a billionaire eventually, and our family's going to be worth trillions. So I will have the money to outdo that. But let's just say that something does specifically happen where I can't fix my diabetes, my life expectancy goes to in my 70s because of that. So because I have a longer life expectancy anyways, probably somewhere around like the mid 70s into the 80 years. So you have to have that understanding as it relates to your finances. And that's the hardest problem for people to cope with, is to make the determining factor of when they're actually going to die, because they don't like talking about it. So the more that you talk about death, the more you get in touch with death deities or death bodhisattvas or things that have to do with death, you're able to face it and talk about it a little bit more. It's going to help you greatly with your advising, right? That's why you want to create benefit in this world and not just in the afterlife, right? So do well, know when you're going to die, have a good idea about that. And then you could look at the actuary table that the Social Security Administration delivers on what your life expectancy is. And then you can divide your current portfolio balance by your remaining life expectancy. And that's what you should spend a specific year. And that makes a little bit more sense than drawing down the 4% every single year. And you can do like a 3% on a low end year and 6% on a high end year, rather than just doing it as a 4%. Okay. Now, again, even with those guardrails, there could be a sudden market crash. It could force you to cut your lifestyle by 25% to stay in that specific band. Now, to prevent this with using kind of traditional financial, financial advising theory, to prevent this, you could add a shock absorber. So you could cap your year-to-year spending changes at a maximum of plus or minus 5%. And this stops your spending from swinging chaotically between feast and famine. And the shock absorber sounds great for peace of mind, but doesn't capping my spending cut expose my portfolio to a heavier drawdown during a longer period. And yes, there is a trade-off that in a deep sustained downturn, your portfolio will face more drawdown, which is why this specific tactic works best for retirees who have a cushion above their essential spending needs, or better yet, if you focus on creating things that provide you income. Okay. Before I get into that, let's talk a little bit against the essential versus discretionary spending. So because of that downturn risk, you need to separate your spending into two buckets: what you have to spend and what you want to spend. That's why no matter how wealthy you are or how poor you are, you should have a budget in understanding your spending patterns. And to be honest with you, we don't have a budget that we micromanage, me and my partner. We actually sat down last night and went through different buckets based off of the money that we wanted to actually use for spending, right? Because we have substantial amounts of money. We didn't want to use the substantial part. We want to reinvest that into businesses and to grow everything. So we set a living expense, like as if we had like a salary, right? A smaller salary to live off of that. And then we created a budget based off of that. So no matter where you're at in life, if you're a single mom in a 1-bedroom apartment, or you're a full family with, 30 kids and millions of dollars, you need to have a budget and understand how you are spending things, because you could always be spending better. And in my opinion, it gives you the ability to invest more and do better for mankind, which is what we're specifically working on. But I guess that is, what's that? Virtue signaling. So I'm virtue signaling right now, and hopefully virtual signaling, because go metaverse. I don't know. Now, because of the drawdown risk, you need to separate those into two buckets, okay? Spending and then what you want to spend. You should cover your absolute necessary expenses with guaranteed income streams, okay? That's the key here, and that's where I want to take a moment to talk about. One of the things, go to 3twarrioracademy.com, follow Coach JV. He talks about our Capital DR system consistently on his social media because it teaches people how to actually invest in things that are producing them actual income. The whole goal is not just to have this bucket of appreciation, right? And the income that you could have is W-2 income, Social Security income, but you want to have passive type of income, and not passive income by getting into some fucking multi-level marketing thing and trying to get 9 people to sell your fucking doTERRA. I'm talking about actually investing in instruments that create income, one of those being dividends. I have a dividend portfolio right now that I'm testing. It has $59,000 in it. It produces me almost $8,000 a year in income. And that $50,000 right now is steady, may fall a little bit, but it will probably always produce me that $8,000 because of the way in which I have diversified it. You could take less income and diversify it where that's also appreciating. But what financial advisors specifically have you do is they have you take that money and put it back into the same thing that created the income. So if I get fucking $5 from Microsoft in income, I'm supposed to put that back into $5 into Microsoft. Well, fuck. What if Microsoft has a catastrophic fucking event when AI takes over the entire world and Microsoft just comes crashing down? Then I have probably even no income because they're not guaranteed to pay me out any of that income. That's the problem. Okay, so you take that income and you diversify that income into other appreciating assets that can appreciate, maybe even produce you other income. And eventually, when you get a big ball going, a big old little snowball, then you start having income that you can live off and to do all kinds of stuff with. Because I could take that $8,000 right now. I could use it to pay off debt. I could maybe live with it. That's not the best thing to do right now because I have these other forms of income. So your financial advisor, if he is a good dude, right? If he knows what the fuck he is talking about, he should be able to talk to you about appreciating assets, appreciating your assets, and also finding ways to produce income for you with your investments so you have more money to live on. One of the things that they do at private banks, if I have $100,000, well, maybe not now 100,000, if I have $200,000 or $300,000 sitting around, right? Does it make sense right now to be in something that's just appreciating? No. Maybe I take that $300,000 and I go buy some commercial property. That commercial property makes me a steady stream of income. Or I go invest in into a company, maybe not a pre-IPO, but into a company that I'm going to help kind of sit on the board and kind of manage, and then they'll pay me based off of the dividends as it pays out, it gets going. Those are just two examples. There's all other kinds of examples, but talk to your financial advisor about that. Okay, so you should have these incomes to help take care of your necessary expenses so you don't have to draw off of that overall portfolio base. Once your essentials are locked in, you can apply this dynamic withdrawal strategy, complete with guardrails and shock absorbers to your discretionary portfolio. You can afford to take more market risk and chase higher returns because you know your survival needs are already met from that specific income. And for those people that tell you, you need to downsize, you need to spend a little bit less than you're living. Why would I want to spend less in my fucking golden years than in the years when I was working 40 or 50 hours a week? I want to spend more because I want to take cruises around the world. I want to go to New Zealand. I want to go to Disneyland every fucking month with my grandkids, right? Or great grandkids, depending on when you started having kids, I suppose. Or with your kids, depending on when you haven't started having kids. I don't have any kids yet. Fuck, if I don't have kids, I gotta have kids when I'm 50. And then by the time I'm 70, they're 20. I want to go to freaking Disneyland with them every month. That'd be awesome. So again, we have to rethink the strategies. The same strategies that got us where we're at today aren't the same strategies that are going to get us to where we need to go in the future. So think about income. It should be about income. What's the income? More income, increasing your income, having more income, investing more of that income, and building and building and building. And to do that, sometimes, as my motto says, you have to work more. We'll be right back.
The ultimate cookout starts with the ultimate ingredients. At Whole Foods Market, no antibiotics ever burgers and kebabs are prepped and ready to throw on the grill. fire up a juicy ribeye. Grab creamy potato salad and savory flatbreads from the prepared foods department and round it all out with 365 brand condiments, chips, and dips at everyday low prices. Whole Foods Market. Make your summer sizzle.
When I was in Las Vegas, my partner asked me about kind of like retirement, and it got me thinking. I try to work. I used to try to work 80 hours a week. When I was working for Wells Fargo, I would work 40 to 45 hours there. I'd work an extra 20 hours during the week, and then maybe another 20 hours over the weekend, depending on what was going on for our businesses, 3T, Age of Radio, and so forth. And it just got me used to work where like 8 hours doesn't feel like shit anymore. I can work 8 hours straight for no problem. Fuck. Excuse me, I'm swearing a lot on this episode. My bad. For instance, we didn't have a meeting this morning. I got more done in the 3 hours of not having a meeting this morning than I usually get done in a whole week when I have meetings. I can bang out and I've been so efficient at actually working when I sit down to actually put in time to work that it's crazy how much I think that I could build and get done if I didn't have to get on meetings and kind of hold others accountable, do advice pieces, do strategy sessions, things of that nature, from actually putting in the specific work. And that's work that I like to do. But the point is, when I've moved mine down to trying to do 53 to 55 hours, last week with our strategy sessions in Vegas, I probably did about 55 hours, maybe 50 hours, maybe a little bit less. And when we were talking about the things that I wanted to accomplish in the time, I didn't take my partner with me to Vegas, which I would have liked to, but she couldn't be in the strategy session, so she would have had to find stuff to do outside of that, and then we would have seen each other, right? But CJV and May, they have their business together. Eventually I'll have my businesses and do these types of things with my partner. But the point is that when she asked me about like retirement's a weird subject to me, because I think of, retiring. I'll still work. I'll still do my podcast. I'll still do content. I love doing Mercury. I love talking about entertainment. I love sitting down and talking with people. I like finding other ways of making content for people to listen to and to provide for them. Specifically right now, I'm in a commentary phase where I get a lot of commentary on stuff, or my thoughts on stuff, I guess you could say, like I'm doing now. But like, how did it get to the fact where if I'm only working 40 hours a week, I think that I'm not working? It's weird, right? That's like an addiction problem. And so when I'm thinking about it, like, we do need to work more. We need to put more efficient and be more time. But again, there's a myth that, that if you work more hours, it automatically means that you're gonna get more done. I think you provide more value if what you're doing is efficient, but not necessarily meaning that you're going to be getting more done. And we live in a weird hustle culture where logging 67 or 80 hours a week is treated like this weird badge of honor. Like, I fucking love telling people, or I loved telling people, now I'm very adamant, like after 55, I'm fucking useless. I know that, right? Because like you're just running wheels to try to get stuff done when you should be resting, and you'll do that other stuff more efficiently and maybe even quicker. But the data that we have, it tells a different story. It says that there's like this productivity paradox, that overworking not only tanks your actual output, but it fundamentally damages your brain and fundamentally damages your body, which if you've seen my eyes, you'd be like, oh my God, you need to go get some skin treatment. But I've been using Stella and Grace and Stella, like these little under eye treatments. I think they're for women. But man, they make my eyes feel and look so much better. Man, I could freaking pump all kinds of products so easily because I use so much amazing stuff. So much amazing stuff. Probably just need to spend more time on that trying to get those sponsors, because could definitely do that. But again, I love doing this anyway. Okay. So a century ago, Henry Ford, the truck guy, ran extensive experiments. And what he discovered was that 40 hours a week is the optimal threshold for employees. So back then, in a labor-intensive situation, or a more labor-intensive situation than when we do right now, right? 40 hours a week was that was like the max output that you should be doing. And that's what led us to the 40-hour work week. right? It was a pure economic strategy because he found that if we went past 40 hours, we started being more and more useless. And now we feel, now the data tells us it's closer to 50, but I'm wondering how productive we would be if we did go back to 40. Because I think about the stuff that I used to get done when I would only work 40 hours a week. It was monumental because I got so much rest and free time. That's a ridiculous amount of free time for only working 40 hours a week, in my opinion. And modern economics kind of back this up. Stanford economist John Pinkavel analyzed munition workers and found that productivity per hour holds steady up to about 48 hours a week, and then it completely falls off of a fucking cliff. In fact, the research showed that a 70-hour work week produced virtually the exact same amount of output as a 56-hour work week. Every hour you work past the threshold is effectively fucking useless. Fast forward to today's desk workers. A survey of 10,000 workers by Slack's Workforce Lab found a massive irony. People who log off at the end of the day have 20% higher productivity scores than those who feel obligated to keep working after hours. A study on call center agents showed that a 1% increase in working time only yielded a 0.9% increase in output. You are simply getting less bang for your buck the longer you sit at your desk. Okay, now, but doesn't that burst the 50 or 60 hours help? Sorry, so is it still possible that the 50 or 60 hours help you get ahead just temporarily? Now, the answer is that short bursts during crunch periods can occasionally work, but sustained overwork quickly leads to increased errors and burnout. For knowledge workers, get this, you guys ready for this? This would be fucking crazy. I'm a knowledge worker, right? I'm the most knowledgey worker on the fucking planet. The sweet spot is actually 25 to 35 hours of deep, focused work per week. Okay, so the more that I'm rested, the more that I can put in those 2 hours and be super, super productive because I'm working less in the other specific areas and getting focused work in. So essentially, if you're not being bogged down by doing stuff that's not really moving the needle forward, then you could probably work 25 to 35 hours a week and still get the same amount done that you would in a 40 to 45 hour work week. Ignoring diminishing returns isn't just inefficient, it is also deadly. According to the International Labor Organization, over 840,000 people die every year from health conditions linked to psychosocial risks at work, including long hours and job insecurity. The World Health Organization adds that working 55 hours or more a week is linked to a 35% higher risk of stroke and a 17% higher risk of dying from heart disease. When you overwork, your brain literally begins to break down. There was a pilot study on healthcare workers clocking over 52 hours a week. It showed significant structural changes in the brain, including increased gray matter volume in areas responsible for emotional regulation and decision making. That's why when I hit my peak of 55 hours, even over 50 hours, the slightest thing I can start yelling at Johnny Crypto about something because my emotional regulation is completely off track. Pushing through exhaustion destroys your executive function. Being awake for 19 consecutive hours slows your cognitive function to a level equivalent to a blood alcohol concentration of 0.05%. Staying awake for 24 hours puts you at a 0.1% blood alcohol equivalent, which is above the legal driving limit in most states. And that's why sleep, and why I've been prioritizing my sleep on my Whoop band, because again, Brian Johnson, who I'm a huge fan of, I look up to him a lot when it comes to his health and being efficient, is that the reason why you sleep more is so that you're more efficient in the hours in which you are working. So getting an 8 to 9 hours of rest a night will actually make you more efficient in the things that you are doing. So again, the idea isn't that if you work more, you're going to get more. It's being more, it's not even working smarter and having other people work for you or 100% always having more leverage. What I'm saying is that when you are working, when you are specifically putting in work, you are more efficient when you are sleeping more. Now, the question is your brain just tired? Can't you just drink caffeine and push through the fog to finish a project? Right now, I'm drinking a coffee. It actually has no caffeine because I limit my caffeine consumption after 2 o'clock. Plus, I'm going to go see Supergirl. So as soon as I'm done recording this podcast, and I'm recording this podcast on Monday, June 29th, well, no, your brain's not just tired, and you can't just increase it with caffeine because cognitive fatigue literally depletes your brain's limited supply of glucose and oxygen. So furthermore, your brain relies on the glymphatic system. So during sleep, to clear out accumulated toxins, that's what the glymphatic system does. So skipping sleep means those toxins stay in your brain, making complex problem solving impossible, which is why when I have a good night's sleep, it's so much easier for me to cognitively think of good solutions to good problems because I've actually had that specific rest. And if you can couple that with more downtime doing the things that you enjoy, like rest and relaxation things, then you will 100% be way more effective. Now, if we zoom out to a global scale, the productivity paradox is glaring. If you look at 40 OECD economies, the correlation is stark. The longer a country works, the less it gets out of each hour. Germany, for example, works the fewest hours, about 1,330 a year, but generates an incredible $98 of output per hour. Mexico, on the other hand, fucking Mexicans is like hardest working people of all time. Mexicans, on the other hand, work roughly 2,200 hours, but generate only $25 an hour. For every extra 100 hours a country works in a year, they lose about $10 in output per hour. And there's a cost to burnout. When individuals hit the wall, it damages the economy permanently. There was a Swedish study that found that burnout causes economic scarring. 2 years after clinical burnout diagnosis, individuals suffered a permanent 12.36% earnings loss. When aggregated, burnout reduces national labor income by an estimated 3.6% due to sick leave and loss of productivity. Now, with all this data showing that the shorter hours lead to better output, is this why we are finally seeing momentum for the 4-day work week? There are major trials of a 4-day work week in Iceland, UK, and at Microsoft Japan have all shown that reducing hours maintains or even improves total output. With Microsoft, Japan reported a massive 40% jump in productivity, probably because those motherfuckers are more productive than us and they're working like twice as much as us. So when you move them down to 40 hours, their fucking nervous system probably rested and then they just became efficient freaking machines. That's what probably happened. So for me, the conversation was very important and really made me think about it a lot and digest it a lot, that even if me personally, right, if I were to work less, I would be able to do more of my hobbies and create even more stuff in the world that I could still put on the internet, like write books, put them out. So they are also work, but they're not this other work that's being driven by all of the other factors inside of our business. There's also the fact of doing something for the sake of doing it. Right? Like we have a band called Cardboard Astronaut. You can go check them out on Cardboard Astronaut. Okay, I play guitar in it. My personal album I want to record, right? My 9 album, it's called 9. And I want to record that. And well, that's the band. It's just called 9 is the moniker for it. Our band, the people in Cardboard Astronaut, they want to record, all 100% do it. Love them. I want to record. But if we never recorded and I just got to play guitar with them and get better at my hobby, I'd be fine with that. I'd want to even do that more, right? And so the point is that you have to make time to do the things that you enjoy for the sake of enjoying them. And we've created this world where we think all of our hobbies have to be turned into work and into money. And I'm not saying that it's bad if you do that, that's okay. But just know that it's okay if it doesn't. Maybe it's something that you just like doing for the sake of doing it. Like I like reading for the sake of reading. I technically like writing in my journal for the sake of journaling. It doesn't have to have an end goal. It's okay just to do something because you enjoy it. And the thing that I found and that I'm finding and I'm starting to learn as I get older and trying to be more efficient, because we're having to solve larger and more complex problems, the efficiency is way more important, is the importance of rest vis-a-vis sleep, the importance of working less and less hours, having more time to do the things that you love, and also realizing that working so much is the reason why I lost things that I loved in the past, and I gave up on a lot of things in the world because of the fact that I was working and trying to build all these things. And again, I'm grateful from where I'm at, being a multimillionaire and on track to be even more in that in the future, but more so solving the most complex problems. And so again, problem solving and efficiency is based off of the time that you're allotting to it, not necessarily the amount of hours that you're putting into it. So if you are getting really, really efficient, then you can efficiency yourself down to 35 or 25 hours and do some really complex, really important stuff in that time that you're actually putting in the thinking power, then you can probably create a lot of stuff in that time and not have to spend 40 or 50 hours grinding away in other areas. And as I always say, be thankful, grateful, and kind. We'll talk with you soon. Bye.
Tell me, how does it feel? Tell me, how does it feel? I see the meaning of life in your eyes. It's like swimming in the ocean at night. And when I'm with you, it's like I'm on fire. Nothing is real outside myself and your smile lines bring me down with sweet soft sound. My name, the way it sparkles when it leaves your mouth, fill my soul